Today's teardown is on probably the heaviest engine I've done to date. This is a Cummins 6.7 liter turbo diesel engine from a 2015 Dodge Ram 2500. And I've had this thing for a long time here, and I've been kind of dreading taking this apart because it's not like a normal engine. I'm not going to just pick the head off of it or put the engine on an engine stand because, well, I'm just not going to do that because I can't. But we're going to take this whole thing apart on the crate. I have no idea what's wrong with it. I will say I paid $600 for this engine, so I'm hoping there's $600 for the parts left on this. There's a turbo, there's some EGR stuff, and yeah, there's all kinds of parts that I don't even know what they do on this thing because this is the latest diesel engine I've ever had. It has a ton of emissions equipment on it, which I'm sure a lot of you just love so much. But we're going to get it all apart and see what went wrong. Before we go wrenching on this thing, let's take a look at what kind of parts this thing still has on it. Here is the turbo. It's a Holset HE300 VG. It's a variable gate, like a variable vane turbo. It has these vanes that change pitch inside the exhaust housing, which change the amount of exhaust gases that go through the exhaust wheel or bypass the exhaust wheel. It doesn't have a wastegate as such. I wouldn't call it modern technology. It's been around for quite some time, but this is electronically controlled here. And this controller is actually worth like $200 as a core. So maybe if it's good, which it looks pretty crusty. And the reason this engine looks crusty is I believe it's from Iowa, somewhere near Des Moines. I had some tags on it when I got it, so I kind of had an idea of where it came from. That's why it looks like it might have powered the Titanic at one point. It's got a block heater. Here's your oil filter housing. The rest of this looks pretty standard Cummins equipment outside of here's your EGR cooler, and it's got some valve control. I guess that's just to bypass the EGR or allow it to flow into, yeah, there's the intake. There's a pipe that came around this side. I must admit, I sold a couple parts off of this to my buddy Pete. He bought one of these trucks and he needed a couple things to put that engine back together. So it's missing like the thermostat housing and whatever. Let's see what's on the other side. And this is the intake side of the motor. Here's where the pressurized air from the intercooler goes in. It's got a bunch of sensors that do stuff. That is broken off of that. Okay, remember when I said this engine is in pretty good shape and it's not all beat up? Did I say that? I don't know what I said. Well, that's broken. That kind of sucks. But I don't see too much else broken. Here's a fuel filter housing over here. Unfortunately, the ECM is gone. That's a pretty expensive part. But we've got your pump right here, your high pressure pump. And there's a piece of foam that I can remove. Look, we're already pulling parts off of it. Let go. Well, you guys know the drill. First things first, let's pull some spark plugs and wait. Not here, we're not. Let's get some of the coolant hoses and oil supply hoses taken care of, the ones that go to the turbo. Start dismantling the EGR cooling system. All that good stuff. Oh, that was already loose. Be empty. It's empty. Look at that. It's loose. There's some stuff hiding behind there. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, I see. Okay, man, that EGR cooler is heavy. Oh, now we can see the exhaust manifold. And then there's still this thing that looks like it's going to come off with the exhaust manifold. Yeah, I'll probably pull that all together with the turbo. Let's make sure we get all the other lines off. The next thing I need to do is get this harness disconnected somehow. I have no idea how this connector works. I literally cannot. Oh, I see how it works. Nope, that doesn't do it either. So this is all one piece here. I'm going to take this elbow off, and I'm just going to deal with that later. I take this off anyway. I I feel like this is one of those things that I'm going to tell you I'm going to take it off, and I can't get it off. Let's give it a little tap, right? Hey, it's moving. Yes. Success. Now we've got a oil drain. And it's got the shield on here, which I guess I have to take the motor mount bracket off to get the shield off. That's got to be fun in the truck. Oh, the shield is part of that. All right, let's start getting this exhaust manifold unbolted. Haha. There's one. Well, it looks like I'm supposed to pull this tube off, which I'm going to leave it on there. But no, I'm going to get it stuck. That's what I'm going to do. So I just have the exhaust manifold bolts now. Just a bunch of 13s. All right, the last bolt. It's the oil drain. I am gonna. Oh, this is gonna be great. I guess I should probably disconnect this thing too. Well, I'm doing good tonight. Huh. Wow. I'm just gonna put that there. Ah. Turns out there are 2 bolts on the oil drain. I did all that for nothing. I was hoping that this line would come right out of the block. I was wrong. Wow, this is not light. Go ahead and break the exhaust manifold off the turbo. Just 4 bolts. It's laughing at me. Yahtzee. And now I can actually move this turbo around. Take a look at this behemoth. Well, it doesn't have any shaft play and the impeller looks good. It doesn't look like it's sucked in any debris, but there are some marks on the outlet, like something landed on it or hit it. I don't see any other damage yet. Exhaust housing looks okay. Again, this is a variable vane, and I'm not going to be splitting this today. It's going to take a little bit of work to do that, but yeah, I think I've got at least a sellable, rebuildable turbo with no major damage. And let's look at the EGR cooler, which is somehow heavier than, oh, it's this giant iron piece on the bottom. Does that come off? It does come off. Does it come off easily? I think it comes off easily. Yes. We don't need that. We don't need that. We don't need that. And there's the EGR cooler, which is still pretty heavy. It's really not too carboned up. It looks all right to me. It's not a lot of soot or anything. There's still some coolant in there. Nothing is ever drained all the way. But I don't know if these have any value. Some EGR coolers are worth a bunch of money. Some are worth literally nothing. Now it's time for the intake side of the engine. We're going to get this piece of crap foam off of here. There we are. Let's get this harness loose. The worst part about a Chrysler is the Chrysler harness, I think. I hate their connectors. Like these ones with these little red locking tabs. These are the worst. I don't know who they were talking to when they thought these were a great idea. It wasn't me. It was not me. Well, that sensor's broken anyway. Oh, this one has another one of those red locking tabs. A lot of Teslas use those connectors too. It's kind of odd. One of the worst parts of a Chrysler, and Tesla uses it. Let's get this broken part off of here. It's a shame it's broken. I think these are worth a bunch of money. Probably because they break in an accident. Or maybe they go bad. I don't know. This is my first 6.7, so I don't really know what I'm doing here. I'm just taking bolts out as I see them. That's how we do that. Wow, look how much soot there is in that. I don't know why I'm using a hammer. It seemed like the most appropriate tool. It's not too bad, I guess. Look at the amount of buildup here. It's pretty gnarly looking. It's all from EGR, I bet. It looks like one of the injector lines is missing. Cylinder 5. So that might be a clue, maybe? Or did I already pull that off? No, it's missing. It's straight up missing. And finally got that off. Let's get this radio. Oh boy. Pretty sooty. Yeah, it's not too bad. I've seen worse. Sure, it's a lot dirtier than the 5.9 usually is though. Now, how does this come off? Oh. You just pull on it. Oh, that was easy. Uh-oh. I already see problems. Haha. Okay. That one's good. That one's good. That was good-ish. It's good. It's good. That one's bad. Well, it looks like this piece that presses down each valve, it just came off. Let's see if we can get this push rod out of here. No, we're gonna have to pull the rocker out first. Maybe. Nope. No, that won't come right out. But why did that come off? You might ask. Well, why does that not touch? What's missing? What happened here? All of these questions. Let's find some answers. Let's start taking this thing apart. We're going to have to take this injector harness thing off first, and then this aluminum plate, and then we'll get the injectors out. I'll remember to remove these tubes first. Haha. So when I first pull that valve cover off, this piece here, which presses down two valves, each rocker controls two different valves. It's a 24 valve engine. This was just kind of laying over here by the wayside. I don't know, who's this wayside anymore? Anyway, how did that get there? And even when you put this back in place, like so, there's a ton. This doesn't even make contact with the push rod. Why is that? Is the push rod bent? What has gone on inside of this engine? I don't see any exit wounds. Before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and pull these tubes out so that I can get the injectors out a lot easier than last time. Oh, it's so much easier. Time to pull the rocker arms and all the valve train. I've got myself a box to keep all of that together. Most interested in see what happens when these come apart. So I don't see any damage yet. There's one push rod. Well, neither one of those is bent. Actually, when you... Oh, there's still a lifter in there somewhere. Get these injectors out. That one wasn't tight. I guess that's how they are. It didn't take too much force at all. This one, on the other hand, this one appears to want to stay part of the cylinder head. It's just... So we got a problem with number 6. Maybe. This is going so much smoother than the 5.9. All your guys' tips and tricks are being put to use. Let's give it some taps. What happened in this cylinder? Well, that was dumb. Somehow that flying injector did not really do much damage. Somehow. I usually sell these as cores anyway. I just don't like them to have actual physical damage. That was a dumb move on my part. But the rest of the injectors look pretty good as well. I don't see any signs of chaos inside this engine. Not yet. That one injector was very stuck. That O-ring was stubborn. Well, let's continuing. We're going to get this idler pulley out of the way. And we're going to go ahead and just pull this bracket all the way off here once I get the right size socket. It's like a rotary phone. Maybe a little. It is now time to pull the cylinder head. Well, that's the easy way. Well, the head gasket looks okay. At least I don't see anything jumping out at me. Looking at all the pistons. And there's some scoring on this cylinder. Cylinder 5, that's one that was missing the fuel line, but this. Uh-oh, it's got one of those adjustable rods. That's not good. I mean, that dropped a ton. Like, I can actually see where the rings were and where the piston is now. It's pretty wild. If you look closely at that piston, you can see there's an outline at the bottom of the cylinder head, which means it struck the cylinder head. And there's actually grooves in that piston from hitting the cylinder head. So there's obviously been a bearing delete. I know a lot of people delete these engines, but you're not supposed to delete the bearings. It's bad. I think there's definitely going to be some damage when we pull the bottom end apart on cylinder 6. But the rest of the cylinders actually look pretty decent. They're not adjustable. It's always a good thing. The cylinder head actually looks pretty decent. There's some signs of water, moisture in cylinder 5, a little bit in 2. The rest of this looks good. I don't see any valve damage. I really don't see anything wrong with this. Obviously, it's going to have to go to the machine shop and be checked, but I think this is a sellable head. I'm going to go ahead and try to wrestle the rest of this wire harness off of here. I don't know how successful I will be. I've put this engine on a cart just so I could work on it without bending over. And we're going to go ahead and get some of the outside perimeter stuff off the block before we flip the block on its tail and pull the rods and pistons and the crank and the cam and all that good stuff out. I don't know how I'm going to do this yet. The last one I did on the ground, that was not that much fun. Hopefully this is more fun. First thing we're going to do to get this pump off, take this little cap out of here. This gives you access to the gear. Go ahead and get this nut off. There's 2 holes in the gear that drives this pump. So we're going to go ahead and use this puller on it. I did this the last time on the 5.9 and it worked pretty well. Alright, there we go. That's all we needed. My wrench is part of the puller now. That's fine, I'll get it back later. There are 3/13s that hold this on. There we go. Voila! One expensive part. Let's get some of this side cleared off. Fuel filter housing. And while we're here, we'll just take this off. In order to get the oil filter housing off, I actually have to remove the oil filter. Ha ha ha! There we go. Hopefully this doesn't make too much of a mess. I don't anticipate that. I don't know if this is a good filter or a bad filter. I think Wix generally makes decent filters. It's been my experience. Well, that's completely empty. So now I just gotta bring it 10s and that housing will come off. Yeah, there's a little bit of oil. Made a little bit of a mess. Stinks bad. Just cooler. That one also says China on it, just like the last Cummins engine I pulled apart. The next thing we're going to do is remove the engine to transmission adapter plate. The reason that this is actually not part of the cast iron block and it's a separate piece is that this engine has very many applications. It's not just in a Dodge Ram. It could be in a medium duty truck. It could be in a piece of machinery, stationary equipment. So to make one block that fits everything and then have various bell housing adapter plates is much cheaper. But these are worth some money, so that's good for me. And this one appears to be in decent shape. So we're gonna go ahead and zip these 8 bolts out and pull this plate off. They usually just fall right off. I know I didn't talk about this yet in the video, but this engine came in without an oil pan, and that happens on a lot of these cores. Some tech will dig into it, find a problem with the bottom end, or find a problem with the top end, and the valve cover will have been off, and they don't really get paid to button these things back together, or they pulled the pan and threw it aside, or maybe the pan was damaged. Either way, we didn't get a pan with that one, which is not the end of the world. These are not super expensive. But it makes my job a little bit easier. I've got a lot less to remove. The next step, we're going to go ahead and remove this crank pulley. You know what? I'm going to be smart and thread one of these partially in so when it comes flying off, it doesn't fall off the table. This is part of getting older, get wiser, because you hurt yourself try to hurt yourself less. Right. There we are. And I can just... Oh, that's heavy. Oh, I did not expect that. Now we're going to remove all the timing case bolts. Alright, there's the gear that's already loose from the pump. So with the timing cover off, you've got your cam, here's your oil pump, and here's the crankshaft. We're going to go ahead and pull this oil pump while we're right here. And it actually looks okay. I don't see any, I don't really, oh wait, there's a little bit of damage in there. It's really not too bad. Not as nice as the last 5.9 I pulled apart. I'm going to get 2 of the bolts for this and see if we can turn that over. Oh yes. Very nice. Oh, this is fantastic. So now we can get to this. Now I'm not going to be able to pull the cam out because of the lifters, since the engine is sitting upright, but we're going to fix that in a moment here. Let's go ahead and pull this windage tray. Here's the bottom end without the windage tray. Everything looks okay, right? Just fine. It is very not fine. This is number 6, the adjustable rod. It looks like the rod cap is, the side of it is broken. Let's see what this looks like here. Well, these bolts are loose, kind of. Yeah, I don't know what we're going to find when we get this apart, but let's start here, because that seems like the most fun. Yeah. Oh my gosh. These are coming out, but the bolts are bent. Could this be what they pulled apart and found? Why are the bolts bent? Let's see how this one turns. Oh, that one's really bent. Watch the head of that bolt spin. That's impressive. Let's just use this. Here we go. Wow. Wow, that's awesome. Oh, look at that crank. It's done. It's totally done. Let's see if we can give that rod a couple taps, move it off the journal. I have my doubts. I'm not really worried about hurting the rod at this point. Oh, yeah. Nice. Well, I don't know if that's going to come out. Oh, yes, it's going to come out. We're getting there. We're crowning. There we are. Well, here is cylinder 6. Look at that rod cap. That edge is not, that's not how that's supposed to look. This is beating the crap out of itself. This thing must have been hammering for quite some time. There's not really any damage to the piston. It's actually pretty decent, but the rod is done, totally done. I mean, it was hammered so long. Look at that bolt. That's amazing. I don't know if the bolts backed off or it spun a bearing. It's hard to tell what came first, the chicken or the egg in this situation, but one thing's for certain, this engine is not directly rebuildable. I mean, I think the block might be okay, but the crank, that's going to need some work. This rod is trash. But you could fix this engine, I think. but I'm not going to. It's not what I do. We're going to sell all the parts so that everybody can fix all of their engines. Now we're going to turn this over and get cylinder 5 out and work our way towards the front. Yeah, that bearing's got a little bit of damage too. This will probably come out a little bit easier. Cylinder 5 looks good. Cylinder 4 is a little less damage, still not great. There's 3, or 4 rather, and there's 3. A little less damage than the previous cylinders. All right. There's 2. And there is cylinder 1. Here's some of the bearing damage on cylinder 5. There's 4. And 3. These are all pretty tore up. This is a classic case of oil starvation. I think that's what ultimately did this engine in. And cylinder 2. 1 doesn't look too bad. Those are pretty bad. The next step really needs to be getting this cam out. But I gotta figure out how to get the lifters up in their bores. I don't know if I can do that easily. I think, let's see if we turn this all the way over a few times, maybe the gravity will help me. Look at that. I love my brain sometimes. Sometimes it's a piece of crap. Boy, this is a big old cam. Boop! It's out. Unfortunately, the cam is trashed. And that was that cylinder that was knocked off when we pulled the valve cover. The valve train was falling apart. That's that lobe right there. Well, this answers a lot of questions. This is the bottom of the lifter. And it just fell out. Well, folks, this is the problem. This is a normal lifter bucket here. And this is what was on that cylinder that had like an inch of play between the push rod and the rocker arm. And that's why. We are almost done, but first, before I can pull the crank, I have to remove this aluminum timing case. It's just a bunch of 11 millimeters. I think that's it. I do think that's it. Something is unhappy here. It looks like the gasket's holding this together. No way. Oh, it's on a dowel. There we go. The last piece of this puzzle is to unbolt the main caps, and I really don't know what's going to happen with this engine at its current position, but we're just going to do it. Ooh, I thought that thing was going to come flying out of there, but apparently not. So this is like a 200-pound crank, and now I have created a situation that I shouldn't have at all. Nope, I shouldn't have done it this way. I have a couple different ways I can do this. I can do it the right way, or the way that's going to happen. And oh boy, that's scary. What can I do here? Yeah, this foam will fix it. The idea here is to not lose any digits. The crank is already pretty well pooched here. Yes! Nice and easy. Here's the worst main bearing, and that one's pretty rough too. All the main bearings have some damage, but this is by far the worst. Look what we have here. Will this come out? Oh, it's part of it now. Nope, that's, yes! Look at that. That's amazing. It was still here. There's the failed lifter bucket here, plunger, whatever you want to call it. That's amazing. I'm happy. The good news is I believe the block is totally salvageable. There's nothing broken, no major gouges. There's a few. It may need to go slightly over, but it's not bad at all. These cylinders are all pretty nice. It's just this cylinder here that has a few lateral scratches. Kind of hard to see. There you go. Now you can see them. I am tickled about this. I didn't think I was going to get a usable block. That was a surprisingly easy teardown. I kind of dreaded taking this engine apart. I'd kind of kicked it off to the side just because of how big it is. But it's actually really easy to work on. And I learned a lot of how to work on this engine from the last 5.9 I tore apart and the comments on that video. It all helped me take this engine apart without really thinking about what I was doing. It's not hard to work on at all. There's just a lot more emissions equipment. I mean, that's kind of subpar for the course. And everything's just really heavy, so you got to be careful. But outside of that, it came apart super smooth. As far as what happened to this engine, I think it was an oil starvation issue. I think it ate cylinder 6 rod bearing. That piston came up, crammed into one of the valves, which pushed the push rod down and broke the lifter. I mean, something had to give in the valve train if that piston's coming up. I mean, those engines make so much torque, so much power, something's going to break. I'm actually surprised that not more was damaged from that teardown. I got a good block, a good head. I got a lot of good parts to sell. The turbo, the fuel pump. I'm actually going to even sell the hardware from this engine. We're going to try that. I don't want to waste anything. So if you'd like to buy parts off of this engine or any of the other engines I've torn down, I'm going to leave our email in the video description. And I'm actually going to try something different as well. A different type of teardown coming up soon. I'm going to get this Land Cruiser running. Essentially, we're going to tear this car down, tear this Land Cruiser down to where I can hear the engine if the engine is not broken. It ran into a tank at like 300 miles an hour or something. The engine might be okay. We're going to find out. I've got another parts Land Cruiser next to it with a blown motor, so I'll have plenty of parts to swap over. And I'm going to show you the great lengths that we go through to getting some 300,000 mile Toyota Land Cruiser to run. If you'd like to see that, don't forget to subscribe. And like always, I love all the comments, all the suggestions, all the feedback. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.